Alrighty, so we are near the end of the season, and as we talk about how there's been a lot of great playoff race and also seedings that is happening right now, we're also getting to the point where we're going to start seeing teams that are getting eliminated. And alas, we did saw the first team that got eliminated. Actually, not this weekend, but in the last weekend as well. And that team, of course, is the San Jose Earthquakes. And honestly, this is I think the second time in the last 3 years that I start the moving forward series talking about the San Jose Earthquakes. I usually talk about the first team in the moving forward series as the first one to be eliminated in this season, and I don't think it should be a big surprise why they got eliminated this year and why this is continued to be the most poorly run franchise in MLS right now and are run probably right now by the worst owner in MLS. I mean, I know obviously Montreal fans will say otherwise, and even maybe some Colorado Rapids fans will say otherwise with Stan Kroenke. But let's be honest, Sean Fisher is probably the worst owner right now, not just in MLS, but maybe one of the worst owner in sports as well, and definitely probably the worst owner right now in MLB with the fiasco that he has with the Oakland A's. But that being said, in terms of the record they have, 5-3-22. Yeah, that is a very, very ugly record. Though I will say that, despite the fact that they have less points than they did in 2018, which was the worst season in the Quakes history, and there could be a chance that they could not only equal that, but could even be worse because they've only got 18 points, and if they don't get 3 more points in these next 4 games, it would be the worst ever season in terms of points total for the Quakes. At least they have more wins this year. They had four in 2018. This time they have five, but this season they definitely draw less games compared to that woeful 2018 teams. And I might even think about making a video talking about this Quakes team compared to the 2018 team because I can definitely see some comparison between this team and the 2018 teams. You even see how during this season I mentioned a lot of times that this team kind of reminds me a little bit of the 2018 team and some of the big issue that this team had back in 2018 kind of creeped into this season as well. But yeah, they currently have 18 points, and again, the next 4 games to finish their season, I believe they play against Montreal on the road, then they play against Dallas and RSL at home, and then they finish the season again against LAFC. So yeah, those are gonna be tough games to come by. Most of the team, maybe besides Montreal, might be a winnable game. Well, I say that, but that's a road game, so yeah, usually that doesn't go well. And I think the only game I can think of where the Quakes maybe could pick up points is against RSL because they have had RSL number lately. But the goal scoring they have this season, 37 goals, which is actually not one of the worst, or not the worst in the league. It's definitely one of the worst, but it's not the worst in the league. It's not even the worst in the Western Conference. I think Austin right now has the worst goal scoring record. Goal allowed is 69 goals. Yeah, that is definitely the worst in MLS. And what's even crazy is that I think defensively the Quakes have gone better. I remember in the beginning of the season, even after the firing of Luchi Gonzalez, this team was not only head and shoulder the worst defensive team in the league, but there was a sense that they could see not just 70 plus goal, but maybe even in the 80 plus goal mark, and that obviously the Quakes are just 6 goals away from breaking the unwanted record that Cincinnati set with 75 goals conceded a couple of years ago. And there could be a case that they could do so because they do face against a couple of teams that could definitely put some goals on them. But at least I will say that the defense have been doing a little bit better, and part of that is because Daniel is back in goal in this team, and it's pretty clear that for most of the season, and I think this is kind of the same thing for last season as well. Last season, the Quakes they had a respectable goal now mark, but a lot of that is because Daniel was saving their ass every single game, and we've seen this season where Daniel hasn't been healthy for most of the games. How decides to put William Yarrow and even Jacob in there. Daniels in that or not Jacob Jackson on this team. Yeah, they were not great MLS goalkeeper. Not even close to being starting caliber MLS goalkeeper. That's kind of unsurprising that they gave up so many goals, and not to mention the defense just completely fall apart. And a part of that, of course, is because of injuries. They have had a couple of key guys on this team that is out because of injury. But not to mention there are some players that really stepped up last season on the defensive end, clearly regress heading into this season as well. And I'll mention those names as well. But the goal differential minus 32, by far the worst in the league. As I mentioned, they're currently dead last in MLS, and they're now to win the wooden spoon. I mean, the closest team behind them, I think, is the New England Revolution, but they are on 28 points. So there's a 10-point gap between the Quakes and that team's. Yeah, they're gonna win the wooden spoon. They probably might even wrapped up that spot as soon as next match week, depending on how the resort goes. Last five season for them. So last season it was a relatively good season where they make it to the playoffs in ninth place. And again, the narrative of the Quakes is that every time when they just made it to the playoffs and on the fringes of doing so, they're gonna absolutely collapse. The very next season, and that's where again this narrative happened, and I'll mention it again in terms of what went wrong. But they have a 10, 14, and 10 record with 44 points. They got eliminated by Sporting KC in the wild card round. In 2022, yeah, this was also not a great season. Though, even though they finished dead last this season, it wasn't as bad as it sounds, and that they actually picked up pretty good amount of points, even doubled the amount of points total that they put up this season, despite finishing dead last that season as well. An 8, 11, 15 record with 35 points. And what's kind of interesting, that was actually one of the highest total points for the team that finished dead last in the West. The West was really competitive that year, and obviously they did not make it to the playoffs. In 2021, they finished in 10th place with 10, 11, and 13 record with 41 points. Also did not make it to the playoffs, and in 2020, the COVID shortened season, they did make it to the playoffs with an 8, 6, and 9 record and finished with 30 points, but once again, they were eliminated in the first round, and once again, in the hands of Sporting KC. And then in 2019, they finished 8th place, and again, that season they did not make it to the playoffs because back then, only 17, of course, make it to the playoffs with 13, 5, and 16 record with 44 points. I think that was the year when they play against the Portland Timbers on the final on the road, had a chance to win to get themselves into the playoffs, and they didn't do that. And that was also the first year in charge for Mateus Almeida, who, despite the fact that Almeida didn't bring too much success, especially playoff success to this team as what we thought he was going to be, he is still by far probably the most successful recent head coach for the Quakes, because the coaching carousel for the Quakes, it's been an absolute nightmare. Like there's just been mostly the instability in that role as well, and really besides Almeida, pretty much every single head coach that the Quakes have had going back to Dominic Kidner, when they fired him back in 2017, has left the team after less than 2 seasons. Now, top goal scorer for this team, believe it or not, Amal Pellegrino, who there was a lot of expectation that he was gonna do very well this season in front of goals. Yeah, it's safe to say that he did not hit those expectations, but he still have scored 7 goals, and he has definitely picked up as the season goes along. But in second place, we got Jeremy Abovasi, who had a disastrous start to his season and was just completely snake bitten. He's definitely gone much better lately with five goals, followed by Christian Espinoza with 4 goals, Hernan Lopez with 4 goals, and Benji Kanovich with 3 goals. Top assist leader, unsurprisingly, it's Christian Espinoza, who's continued to be one of the more underappreciated attacker in this league. I mean, I cannot believe how much not how much underappreciation he gets. I know he is in a last place team, and he playing in the worst team in the league, but honestly, he is single handedly at times carry this team, and unlike last season where at least he kind of carried it into the goal scoring chart, he couldn't quite do so this year, but he's still the top assist leader and head and shoulder above that. To 13 assists this season, followed by Victor Costa with 3 assists, Jeremy Abovsi with 2, Hernan Lopez with 2, and Bruno Wilson with 2 assists. Best win of this season for the Quakes. There's not really a lot to choose when you only win 5 games this season, but I'm gonna go with the 2-0 win that the Quakes had against RSL. Again, going back to that game, I was absolutely shocked the fact that they won that one, considering that again I wasn't expecting the Quakes to come back from that Leeds Cup to have a good start and playing against an RSL team that was doing really well, even though they kind of had a little bit of a disappointing Leeds Cup run. I thought that was going to be easy picking for RSL. But even though I said that the Quakes have Real Salt Lake number recently, I didn't think they were gonna go walk into the Riot and get a 2-0 win like that. And again, that was probably the most impressive performance I think they have played this season. And also, keep in mind the best win this season. I didn't include the Leeds Cup. If I didn't include the Leeds Cup, it's easily that 5-0 win that they had against Necaxa. I mean, that game, it felt like I was stepping in an alternative universe when the Quakes were actually a decent team in the way that they play. I mean, that was by far not only the best that the Quakes have played this season, but that's probably the best I've seen the Quakes play in recent years of how much they absolutely picked apart against a Necaxa team that Necaxa wasn't a pushover in the Leagues Cup. They beat the Seattle Sounders and they almost beat Minnesota if it wasn't for Dane Sinclair heroic performance as well. But in terms of league play, it has to be that 2-0 road win that they had against RSL just about a month ago. The worst loss this season, there was a lot to choose because when you lose 22 times, there's definitely a lot of easy choices, or well, I would say tough choices when it comes to a lot of option that I would take. But I'm gonna go with a 3-0 loss that they had against the Galaxy at Cali Clasico. That was probably the flattest performance I've seen the Quakes had in a Cali Clasico ever. There's no hiding from that. That was just absolutely embarrassing in every single level. I mean, you might think that the one that they had, I think about a year ago, in or about 2 years ago in September when they lost that one as well was kind of embarrassing. But at least back then they didn't really have too much to play for, and that Cal Clasico that was delayed in September, it was kind of a weird one too. It didn't have that same kind of feeling of a big game as we've seen before. But here, this is back in the traditional day against the Galaxy, and again, just the fact that they just completely lay an egg in that game against Galaxy, show no fight, no passion whatsoever. Easily the worst loss of this season. Well, I say easily, but there are definitely some bad losses out there. I could have easily gone with a couple of those games where they've blown leads early in the season, but in terms of just the effort itself, that was the one that was the worst display. Probably right up there in terms of the worst display I've ever seen from the Quakes in a Cali Clasico. Now, in terms of the average attendance, 20,269. Keep in mind, the reason why the attendance is higher than the capacity attendance at PayPal Park is because they do play two games outside PayPal Park. One at Levi Stadium, one at Stanford. Both of those games had 40,000 plus, so that definitely inflate that number. And don't be surprised if next year, if the Quakes do play against Inter Miami and Messi comes into town, that number is going to get pretty high as well because I'm expecting Levi Stadium should be sold out. Should be 70,000 plus inside to see Messi and friends probably demolish this Quakes team apart. But yeah, at least the attendance again, it has increased a little bit. Even at PayPal Park, I think the attendance, it's been very hit and miss. In the beginning of the season, it was kind of a hit, but you can see it start to dwindle as the season goes along. And again, I'm not surprised the fans are not showing up to game. Like when you have literally the worst team in the league by a country mile this season, and you're basically owned by probably the worst owner in MLS right now, is no surprise that the fans had enough, and that yeah, the attendance are not going to get any better for the Quakes. It's going to get worse if they continue to put up the performance that they have put up this season. Now, in terms of MVP, it's got to be Christian Espinoza. I mean, it feels like every single season I've said that, and again, I feel so bad for him. He is a player that I'm pretty sure on any team he could be a guy that could be a starter on any team, and if he decided to leave to join a better team in MLS, I don't blame him whatsoever. I feel so sad that he's been putting up some great numbers year in and year out. Probably the most consistent player that the Quakes have had in the past 5 seasons, and the reason why he's not getting the applause, at least from the media and from in terms of the general public in MLS, is because he's playing like in the worst team in the league, which I feel like that should give you more applause because it's one thing to play against a good team and you put up good number, but you put up good number when you're playing in against a sucky team. That's even more impressive than what people think should be. Disappointment. This was a very tough category in a way that there was a lot of choice. I could have chose. I could have easily chose most of the players on the back line. I can even basically just say pretty much the entire back line in the midfield as well. But I'm gonna go with Carlos Gruezo as probably the biggest disappointment. Again, this is a guy that they pay DP level money, and I thought last season he actually did very well, kind of live up to that DP tag. What in the world has happened to him this season? I mean, it almost felt like he completely fall off the cliff. He has looked nothing like the Carlos Gruezo that we saw last season, and maybe injuries might play part of that because he has suffered some injury during his time for the Quakes. But man, just to see him just completely fall off the cliff like that, very disappointing to see. Breakout young player. Now you would think this is an easy category to choose because the Quakes have been heavily emphasized in terms of the youth academy, and the Quakes, I will say that they still have one of the best youth academy in the league. The problem with the Quakes is that despite they have that good young academy, we already seen a couple of well-known players in that youth academy have departed to other team and made other teams better. So you're welcome in terms of other teams able to take some from this academy and take a couple of good players out of the Quakes team. And again, the thing about the Quakes academy, while it's definitely one of the best in the league, the fact that the Quakes are not really using that academy, and the team that again before I feel like they were going to go with a very FC Dallas or Philadelphia Union approach, really heavily emphasize the academy and play some of those guys in that team, and the fact that so far most of those guys that has come in, or even if they are given the chance to come in and haven't really developed, it's a pretty indictment in terms of how bad in terms of the senior team is. It's not because of the fact the Quakes are not providing good academy player. Like I said, other teams that have got a couple of players that came from the Quakes academies have done well. The reason why they have done well is because they've been gone to better teams and are in a system that better fits them compared to the Quakes as well. So that's why there isn't really a lot of players that I can see in the academy that I can say that it really turns out well when he decided to get promoted into the senior level. So in the end, I'm gonna go with Hernan Lopez, and this is kind of cheating a little bit because in terms of breakout young player, I usually cap the age around 23. But I do think that Hernan Lopez, when he's on, he is definitely on. He looks like at least in the first couple of games look like a beacon of light in terms of the attack, a classic number 10 that could really do well in this league as well, and a classic Argentine number 10 as well that can really do well in this league. And again, if it wasn't on the worst team in the league, I think he would have done very well with some of these teams that are competing for MLS Cup. So what went right for the San Jose Earthquakes? Again, I'm pretty much nitpicking. Again, anytime when I talk about what went right with teams that near the bottom of the standings and getting eliminated, there's not much I can say. But Christian Espinoza again continued to be one of the most underrated winger in the league. And then of course Hernan Lopez, when he's on, he's definitely the real deal. And at least they don't have the worst goal scoring record. But they do have the worst defensive record, and that's where we go to the what went wrong. Again, the defense and goalkeeping was horrendous. To say it's bad is an understatement. It was pretty much non-existent for the uh, entire part of the season. Typical wooden spoon season for a playoff after a playoff narrative continued to happen again. I was really hoping this season that they were gonna finish dead last in the sense I thought they can build up after them making the playoffs last season. Yeah, no. That didn't quite work out. And then, of course, Lucci Ball kind of got found down in this. And again, this is kind of what I said before for in last season that I did had some warning about Lucci Ball and the fact that it feels very similar to what he did during his day with FC Dallas, where yes, it has this kind of negative brand of soccer. It kind of almost reminds me a little bit of the Dominic Kinnear kind of soccer. And really, I think the difference, at least from last year compared to this season, is last year at least it kind of worked out because maybe the league couldn't quite figure out in the end, and at least they defended much better sort of last season, and then of course scoring a bunch of goals, and even Christian Espinosa just carry this team over the top. Well, what happened when that doesn't happen? Then you get this kind of result this season, and it's no surprise that Luchi Gonzalez was rightfully let go. But as I'll mention before, and I'll mention it again, and you hear me say this all the time. The coaching is not the real issue of this team. We all know who is the real issue of this team. It's John Fisher, and moving forward, obviously Fisher out. I mean, that's been the thing that Quakes fans been demanding for years now, and it sucks the fact that we don't know whether or not if eventually there's going to be that one day where John Fisher said, yeah, I think I'm done with the Quakes. I think I'm gonna actually sell the team a little bit. I mean, I think the Quakes should just do the same thing that the Oakland A's are doing. Just simply put up a bunch of sell the team banner, because we all know what is holding back this team. This team is clearly holding back because of the ownership and the lack of spending that is going on, and having the worst owner that doesn't really care about winning whatsoever, and not to mention really just running this team up to the ground year after year. So yeah, again, no surprise that that's going to be one thing that hopefully, and again, there's no guarantee that this is going to happen next season, but the day that when John Fisher finally sell this team will be the day where it feels like the Quakes just won their third MLS Cup. New head coach. Obviously today there was a big bombshell that was dropped by Tom Bogert, talk about how Greg Berhalter, Bruce Arena, and Gio Savarese are the numerous candidate that is linked to the Quakes job. Now that is definitely some marquee name out there. You know, Berhalter. It's kind of interesting because he's also linked with the Chicago Fire job as well, and also being the technical director there as well. And I know some Quakes fans will groan to hear the name Berhalter to be their head coach. He's not really a bad head coach in MLS. I think he's a really good head coach in MLS. He took a very mediocre Columbus Crew team to be a contender year in and URL. Bruce Arena, we also know what he's done with that New England team, and that it is pretty clear that I'm pretty sure the Revs really miss Bruce Arena, because the fact that Bruce Arena is able to take a Revs team that that New England team has a lot of talent, but it's pretty clear that the reason why this season they haven't gone so well is they're missing the coaching ability that Bruce Arena can tie it all together and be and feel compared team. And pretty much everywhere Bruce Arena has gone in MLS, he has been very successful. Savarese, again, a name that is being thrown around. He's done a really good job doing his time with the Portland Timbers as well. Robin Fraser was another name that I've heard that could throw in the hat. But again, all these good coaching that comes to the Quakes, it really doesn't matter if the ownership doesn't span. And again, it feels like another teardown and rebuild is about to happen. And I say that, but I don't know if that's going to happen, because again, the ownership, it all depends whether if they want to spend or not. Probably not. And it's also so shown it in terms of this summer transfer window as well, where it was pretty clear that they need to start this tear down and rebuild this roster. And guess what they did? They did absolutely nothing. They signed nobody on in this team, and it just again continued to show the incompetency of this ownership, and that again, as I said many times in this video, this is probably the worst run MLS team in the league. And again, I know Montreal fans will say otherwise, but at least Montreal is still in the playoff race. This team is nowhere near close to being in the playoff race. This team has just been mediocre to being downright the worst team in the league for the past couple of years, and it's no surprise that a lot of fans of these team has simply checked out. I am not no, I do not blame any Quakes fan decided to not really root for this team, because again, how can you root for a team that simply has this kind of narrative? Something similar to what I'll talk about with the Chicago Fire as well, where it's just been almost a decade of nothing but disappointment year after their year, and that it just feels like anytime when there's hope that things can turn around, it is set by a major setback. And unlike where the Fire, at least they have a different ownership that at least is able to make some changes and not afraid to spend money. You can't say the same thing about the Quakes, and that's got to be the most frustrating thing, to have hope that this team will do well. But how are you going to do it if you don't have an ownership that clearly does not care about winning, and clearly they are not putting the effort whatsoever to compete in the highest level in American soccer. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at this moving forward series. And again, this is going to be one of the longest one out of this series. Anytime when I talk about the Quakes or Minnesota, I go pretty deep and pretty hard when it comes to the moving forward series episode. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a Quakes fan like myself, What do you think is the thing that went right, went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward, how much of a disastrous class this is going to be once again next season as well? Because if you think that things are going to improve with this team next season, unless if they do make some drastic signing and bring in a decent amount of head coach to really clean up this mess, nothing seems like it's going to be changed with next season. But yeah, until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.